Today, we are talking about the magical term that Airbnb has created that anyone who's a host of Airbnb wants to become, and that is a Superhost. Superhost, all about Superhost in this episode. I am a 29-time Airbnb Superhost. My name is Jason Muth. I used to work in the media business for over 25 years, and now in my chapter 2, we're doing short-term rentals to pay the bills and to keep everyone happy at our properties. We've been Superhosts for a long time, and in this episode, we're going to teach you what the criteria is to become a Superhost. If you're not there yet, what are some tips that you could do to actually get to become a Superhost, and why you want to be a Superhost? Because you make more money and your place is more booked. Here we go. All right, today I am flying solo, and I guess that's what happens sometimes when you're a Superhost. Like, nobody wants to record with you. No, I'm just kidding. Like, Rory's busy. We didn't line up any guests. But, the Smart Stay show is not just going to be about guests talking about their experiences, although many of the guests that we have on the show are indeed also Airbnb Superhosts. It feels like such a strange title. Like, I feel like I should have a cape around my neck, should be flying through the sky with some, pink leotard or something on. But it's really not that. Airbnb Superhost is it's a title that they coined many, many years ago. And every quarter, hosts hope to get that email saying, once again, you've qualified to be a Superhost. I would think that over time, they'd probably send different emails out because they've been pretty consistent for many, many years. You get this email with this animated GIF in it, with this water pouring onto a seed and it grows, if I remember it correctly. And then suddenly you start seeing this all over social media that everybody is bragging they're once again a Superhost. Okay, is it something to brag about? What is being a Superhost? What's the criteria involved with that? We're going to get into all those things in this episode of the podcast. And I should say that we actually have been Airbnb Superhost 29 times at this point. The fun fact, though, is that it's not consecutive. We've been doing this since 2016, and there was one quarter that we did not get Superhost. And the reason we didn't get it was because of one specific review. It was a 3-star review. And I didn't have a ton of properties that were under our belt, whether we were co-hosting them or owning them. And that one review tanked me that quarter. So I'd love to be able to say that I was 29-time consecutive Superhost, but that's not true. All right, so let's talk about Superhost. Why is this important? Well, first of all, I found some research online. AirDNA did some research. Hospitable wrote it all up. And being a Superhost is something that actually will get you more revenue, right? 41% of hosts, according to AirDNA, have Superhost status. And on average, Superhosts earn 29% more revenue per year than standard hosts. Now, it could be self-fulfilling because the likelihood that one will be a Superhost and someone that's more involved and active on the platform is probably greater than just a casual renter on Airbnb. But it's good to see these numbers because it's something for someone to strive to achieve if indeed you really want to get into hosting and you want to optimize the revenue that your property could pull in. So these are the specific criteria that are on Airbnb. And if you don't know where this stuff is, it is kind of hidden. You have to go on Airbnb and you have to go under menu, the menu drop down, go to insights. And on the left-hand side, you'll see Superhost. You're going to want to check Superhost right there. So I'm taking a look at my profile right now. They evaluate again every 3 months on a rolling basis. And the assessment period is, I believe, it's a 12-month period. So let's just say that, we're recording this podcast in late September. October 1st through the following September is the assessment period. So probably the new assessment period is going to end, in just a couple of days after we record this, and hopefully we'll be 30 times Superhost. But the criteria for your star rating is 4.8 or above. The criteria for your response rate is 90%. The criteria for the number of stays or nights is 10 completed stays or 100 nights over 3+ stays. And then the criteria for cancellation rate is less than 1%. So you could see how very easily you could not achieve Superhost status if you cancel 1 out of 100 guests. Like if you initiate that cancellation, that could tank you for the quarter. It might tank you for, subsequent quarters as well. That's important because sometimes things pop up at our properties where we can't host a guest. It's actually happened a couple times for us this summer where we needed a guest to cancel for whatever reason. Like, we've talked about having a flood at one of our properties. We had to cancel 5 guests over the course of 3 months because we had an Airbnb guest that stopped the sink with one of the standard sink stoppers. Say that 4 times fast. During a power outage and left the water spigot open. So when they left the next day, the power came back on. The powers our well. The water came out, poured all over the place, and basically ruined the place for a few months. So we actually had to cancel a few guests, and that was not their doing. We had to go through Airbnb, and that's a whole separate story, which I'll talk about in another podcast, because the customer service on that level was really, really rough. But I wanted to make sure that we were not the ones that were canceling and then being penalized when other guests damage our property. So, if you do have to cancel guests, it's always good to try to get them to cancel themselves or get Airbnb to cancel and have it be a no-fault cancellation. And you actually have to call them to get that done. So those are the criteria with being a Superhost. Now, this is something that you should strive to achieve because people can filter on Superhost, and it does stand out in the listing, when you are a Superhost. When people are filtering through properties, scrolling on their phone or on their computer, they'll see Superhost right there, and they'll see it next to your name. This is also important, like if you're launching a new home, like if you happen to have one home and you're launching a second short-term rental because like you really love doing it the first time, and that doesn't have enough reviews. People might click over to your profile and see the fact that you are a Superhost, if indeed you are, and read reviews there, and they might choose your new property as a result. So, being a Superhost is something that people really wear with a proud badge. And it's something that will drive more revenue for you if you are a short-term rental host. So here's some other interesting stats that AirDNA put together. And this one is really, this seems counterintuitive, but I thought about it and it makes sense. Despite earning more revenue overall, Superhosts charge 11% less per night than standard hosts. Now think about that. Superhosts probably know how to optimize their calendars and their rate a little bit better than somebody that forgets to log in half the time, or just has a room that they're available to rent out half the year, or kind of doesn't really care if they're filling their full calendar. A Superhost is probably going to pay attention to rate a little bit more. So they might be a little bit more flexible with reducing their rates during the shoulder season, during the middle of the week, and try to get more reviews. Now, we work with clients in Provincetown for Pride Away stays. And a lot of our properties, since we just launched the business last year, it's a highly seasonal market. And a lot of the properties, they launched in April and May of this year. So shortly before the summer, a lot of times people are launching their calendars and opening them up in December and January for the following summer. So we actually took a different approach and a different strategy, because our strategy was to build up reviews, because we wanted to get the properties, up and going with a lot of guest reviews. But what that did for our profile is we had a higher quantity of reviews coming in. Now, along with that, we did get a handful of 3-star reviews this summer. One we thought was a little unwarranted. One was borderline. But it's easier to counteract those when you have an overabundance of 5-star reviews coming in. Because if you only have 10 reviews, 1 3-star could really affect your numbers, and it could affect your Superhost status. But really, when you have hundreds of reviews coming in, and we're fortunate enough that we're well over 400 reviews at this point, one of them is not going to be a complete disaster. But it's important to continue to stay on top of guest experience, because that's what's going to lead to the 5-star reviews that might counteract anything that could affect your Superhost status. Some other stats that AirDNA found is that listings managed by Superhosts have an occupancy rate of 58% compared to just over 53% for standard hosts. So that actually kind of goes hand in hand with Superhosts is charging less money than the average person. So if you're still striving to try to get to be a super host and you're not there yet, have a look at your calendar and try to figure out a way to get more of those dates booked. And that can be by lowering your rate or shrinking your minimum nights required to, like, from 3 to 2, whatever it is. I'm not a huge fan of one night stays, but you might be in a market that one night stays are a big deal. And if you think about it, if you can keep turning that property over with one night stays and you keep getting 5-star reviews from those people, Airbnb's platform, to my knowledge, counts a one night stay and a 30-night stay the same amount when they calculate your ratings. That is not the case with all platforms online. I just learned that Upwork actually doesn't do that. They actually weight people based on the length of a contract, but I don't think that Airbnb does that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about some quick tips to help you become a super host. These are a courtesy of our friends at Hospitable. That's the property management software that we use and love, and we recommend it. Number one, complete your listing. Fill the whole thing out, every single detail. Set clear expectations with your guests, because if people are showing up and what you deliver is exactly what they expected and more, they're more likely to leave you a 5-star review. And remember, Superhost is quantity of reviews, number of reviews. And if you get bad reviews, you could overcome that with a higher quantity of reviews. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a full listing, so everyone that comes really knows what they're getting and is delighted by that and is more likely to give you a review when they leave. You're going to want to optimize your listing title. Make sure it's catchy and memorable. What that will do is it'll draw more people in to check out your property and potentially book that property. Create an engaging description of your Airbnb rental to get travelers excited about staying in your space. Now, there's other ways that you could do that through messaging. Now, you're going to want to make sure that the messages that you send out, and we're going to have a whole podcast discussion about the way to send messages out to guests. But if you are absent and you're not sending any messages out to people, and you're barely giving a check-in code, there might be that degree of aloofness that your guest sees and really doesn't want to stay at your property much beyond what they need to stay in your property, because you're not really setting the tone, you're not really setting the experience. But if you send an interactive guide, if you get them excited to come, if you welcome them, if you're thankful in all your messaging, they'll see that tone and they might see that you're trying, and they might be more likely to grade on a curve if there are already issues because of your level of communication and customer service. Other things you could do, you could adjust the listing to reflect the season. Again, these things are going to help your occupancy. And in theory, if you're doing a good job, your occupancy will lead to more reviews and lead to a Superhost status. These are things that you should do if you basically just launched your property and you're looking at an empty calendar, you're not sure what rates to charge. Your job right now is to get people in the door and get them at your property and get them talking to you, explaining like what they liked and they disliked about the property. And through your messages, you could gently be saying to them, hey, listen, you're really trying, you want your property to be great for guests. You want the feedback. If you show that effort, I think that really translates well with the guests. Only the most unreasonable of guests won't see that effort and grade you for that effort. Another thing you could do, this is again from Hospitable, is price your property to attract guests in a very affordable manner to maintain a high occupancy rate. We're all trying to be proud as to how much we think we should be getting per night. And there is a minimum that we're not going to want to go below, but the right rate will lead to better occupancy, will lead to more opportunities for you to learn about your property, will lead to more people staying in your property, more people talking about your property, and more people reviewing your property, and then you getting up to that Superhost status a little bit quicker. Show your guests that the stay experience matters to you. That could be anything from a welcome gift or welcome basket, which we don't necessarily recommend, and I'll explain that in a whole nother episode, but you're welcome to do it. To just really gentle, good, solid communication, recommendations, a good guest book, an interactive guidebook if you want to do that, and just a way that you could prove to the guests that, hey, listen, you care about this space, you want them to be comfortable. That should translate into some good reviews for you. Make sure your place is super clean. That goes beyond stating, because cleanliness is probably the first thing that people are going to ding you on if they don't think that your place is clean. Send great messages throughout the entire journey, even after they've checked in. And we'll do entire episodes about messaging here, because I've seen so many people that don't send messages out. And what I've learned in setting up automated messages is that it's a touch point that we're always constantly, saying hi to the guest, but not too much in a pushy manner, that they know we're available if indeed they want to engage with us. And if they don't, it just shows that we're checking in. So those are some really great ways that you can actually try to tell your guests that you care. What that's going to lead to, again, is people that are going to want to give their opinion about their stay with you. And they realize this. They know that this is a business for you. We've said it many times, like, you are running a business. It's not just your vacation home. So if you think about it as a business and you thank your guests and you ask them for their reviews, they're going to give their reviews. Now, one thing I should say about Airbnb is that they're going to also remind your guests to review you, because they want good information on the properties. So they're also going to help contribute to your Superhost status if indeed you're doing a good job. Now, if you're not doing a good job, what that's going to do is it's going to keep reminding people to rate you, and probably rate you poorly. You don't want that to happen, because Superhost is something that, it's not something that is so rare that, people could just lean on that and say, I'm a Superhost, you should book my property. But again, it's proven that Superhosts will make more money. Their places will stay occupied a little bit longer. Plus, it's a fun badge to have on your property, and fun to tell your friends that, you achieved the Superhost status. Along with that, there's some other, little rewards they give out. I don't know why these have been so stingy over time, but they give you like $100 coupon if you want to stay in someone else's short-term rental. I think I've used it once. I think I used the Airbnb $100 discount one time. And I remember back in the day, I don't know if they do this anymore. I don't think they do. But they were offering up, instead of the coupon, they were offering up photography in your property if you wanted that. And of course, I was like, yeah, I'll take the photography. And it turned out that the zip codes were, we were in zip codes that weren't being serviced. So it looks like they've done away with that right now, because the Superhost rewards are the $100 coupon being promoted to guests and that Superhost badge. All right. So are you a Superhost? Are you looking to maintain that status as a Superhost? Are you working toward becoming a Superhost? Let us know in the comments. If you need help becoming a Superhost, reach out to us. And we appreciate your listening. Thank you for listening to the Smart Stay Show. See ya.